They pour him some coffee, he sips the coffee, he opens his coat, reaches into his vest.
He doesn't hold back. He doesn't forgive. Mel Brooks built his empire on satire, but off camera, he remembers every slight, and he never lets it slide.
I need a museum guard. I need somebody to wear a hat, ring a bell, and say, closing time, closing time.
For decades, Mel Brooks has roasted Hollywood from the inside, ripping down egos, mocking institutions, and making chaos into comedy. But behind the laughter, there's something sharper, something colder, a list, the ones who crossed him, the ones who insulted him, defied him, or just rubbed him the wrong way, the ones who didn't laugh. He may play the fool, but Mel doesn't forget who made him the punchline. Blazing Saddles, The Producers, Spaceballs, Young Frankenstein. His legacy is built on mockery, but some actors never found it funny. And when Mel burns a bridge, he doesn't rebuild it. He tortures the memory too.
Society, it's you that I blame.
And when the cameras are off, that's when it gets ugly. Long silences, public snubs, rumors that certain names were blacklisted just for disagreeing.
Because they see what the audience sees, this magnificent silver voice. And so they're fighting to get this kid into the opera.
He's worked with legends, but a few names made him furious. A few triggered something deeper. These aren't feuds, they're personal vendettas. Here are the actors Mel Brooks couldn't stand, the ones he mocked, the ones he iced out, and the ones who never got a second chance. Number 1. Gene Wilder. Some actors make magic, others become the magic. For Mel Brooks, Gene Wilder was both, and that's exactly what made the collapse of their relationship hurt even more. From The Producers to Blazing Saddles to Young Frankenstein, Gene wasn't just a co-star. He was a mirror, a creative soulmate. Their chemistry wasn't something you could write, it just existed. They bounced off each other like lightning and metal. The audience felt it, and for a few wild years, that energy changed the shape of comedy. But brilliance, unchecked, has a cost. And for these two, the price was their friendship. Mel was brilliant, but he didn't like to be challenged, and I challenged him. The tension started quietly. Gene brought Young Frankenstein to Mel. It was his idea. He co-wrote the script, imagined the tone, even pushed to shoot in black and white. But Mel, he had always been the captain of the ship. Sharing that wheel didn't come easy. And as the production went on, what began as creative collaboration turned into an invisible power struggle. They argued over punchlines. Gene wanted the comedy to feel grounded. Mel leaned into absurdity. Sometimes they'd agree. Other times, they'd leave the set not speaking. Still, the movie worked. Maybe too well. I don't like being second-guessed. Not by Gene, not by anyone. After Young Frankenstein, something changed. There were no more calls, no more scripts written with Gene in mind, not even a cameo. And on Gene's side, silence.
And I said, no, I need it. I really need it tonight. So he said, but I'm exhausted. I said, well, what would give you some spirit? He said, well...
The rift wasn't dramatic, but it was permanent. In public, they downplayed it. In private, the people around them knew better. One insider described it as two kings who didn't want to share the throne. And in Hollywood, that usually ends one way: separation without explanation. Even in Wilder's memoir, Mel Brooks is practically invisible. Not one chapter, not one deep reflection. Just a few brief mentions, and that silence spoke volumes. We stopped working together when it stopped feeling safe. Years later, Mel reportedly tried reaching out. A short letter, a warm gesture. Gene never replied. This wasn't a story of betrayal. It was about two perfectionists with no space left to bend. Gene was emotional, vulnerable, and deeply internal. Mel was instinctive, blunt, and fast-moving. Together they sparked brilliance. But brilliance, when left unchecked, doesn't always leave room for friendship. Wilder gave Brooks humanity. Brooks gave Wilder chaos. And when that balance tipped, the work stopped, the friendship ended, and neither one ever talked about it again. Number 2. Marlon Brando. If Mel Brooks was chaos in motion, Marlon Brando was gravity. Heavy, unpredictable, and completely unmovable. Both were legends, but from the beginning, they hated each other's orbit. Brando never laughed at Mel's jokes. Not publicly, not privately. And Mel? He called Brando the most humorless man I ever met. That was only the beginning. Their feud never made headlines, but in the corners of Hollywood, it was common knowledge. Mel saw Brando as a cold wall. Brando saw Mel as a circus act. He does voices, I do people. It was said during a quiet lunch in Beverly Hills, Brando, dismissing Mel in front of other actors. No anger, just pure contempt. Brando didn't understand satire, didn't care for parody, and he definitely didn't like being made fun of. Mel, of course, heard about it. Their paths crossed when Brooks wanted Brando for a part, either silent movie or high anxiety. Reports vary. Mel thought it would be ironic. Brando thought it was insulting. He didn't return the call. Brando thought he was bigger than the punchline. I just thought he was the punchline. That quote never made it to late-night shows, but a friend of Brooks said he'd mutter it at parties whenever Brando's name came up, always with a half smile, always with a sharp edge. They moved in the same circles but never shared a table. If Mel walked into a room, Brando left. If Brando showed up, Mel turned to the next group.
I want to see you all in the back of the car after the show. I have a couple of parliaments in a glove compartment, take a few.
There's one Hollywood story, never confirmed, but whispered often. At a party in the late 70s, Mel did an impromptu impersonation of Brando. Loud, exaggerated, total parody. People laughed, but someone told Brando about it the next day. He didn't laugh. I don't do comedy. I don't like people who fake pain for applause. Brando once told a director that Mel Brooks was a man desperate to be taken seriously, but too afraid to stop joking. Mel never responded publicly, but he never spoke positively about Brando either. There was no project, no film, no professional overlap, just a cold mutual rejection. Two giants, one who made the world laugh, and one who never joined in. And maybe that was the point. Brando didn't want to be in on the joke, and Mel? He didn't want to explain it. Number 3. Dustin Hoffman. Before The Graduate, before the Oscars, before he was Dustin Hoffman, he was just a struggling actor trying to catch a break. And Mel Brooks almost gave him one. Almost. Back in the late 60s, Mel was casting The Producers. He had his eye on a young, wiry actor with a nervous edge and a voice full of tension. That actor was Hoffman. Mel offered him the role of Franz Liebkind, the ex-Nazi playwright with pigeons on his roof. Dustin said yes. Then he got a call from Mike Nichols. I turned down Mel Brooks for the biggest break of my life, and he never forgot it. Nichols was casting The Graduate. Hoffman had a chance to play Benjamin Braddock, a role that would launch him into legend. He chose Nichols. The rest is history. But for Mel, it wasn't just casting, it was personal. In later interviews, Mel joked about it, but those close to him said he didn't take the rejection lightly. He felt ditched, disrespected, and for a man who thrived on loyalty, that stuck. To Mel, comedy was family, and turning your back on family was unforgivable. Dustin made the right call. For him, for me, I found someone who actually wanted to be there. That someone was Kenneth Mars, who ended up stealing the scene. But Mel never offered Hoffman another role. Ever. Not a cameo, not a voice part, nothing. Even when Hoffman was one of the biggest names in Hollywood, Mel didn't reach out again. Years later, Hoffman was asked if he and Mel ever reconnected. He paused, then gave a simple answer. We weren't each other's people.
And then I thought of the Gene Wilder character, Leo Bloom, and from there on it was fun and easy.
Yeah.
It wasn't a feud, it was a wall. Quiet, unspoken, unmoved for decades. Hoffman soared in dramatic roles. Mel continued dominating comedy. But they never crossed paths again, even at award shows or retrospectives where both were celebrated. There are actors who make you laugh, and actors who think laughing is beneath them. That quote never named names, but people always assumed it pointed to Hoffman. The truth? Hoffman didn't hate Mel's films, he just didn't understand them. And Mel? He never liked actors who needed convincing. If you weren't all in, you were out. What started as a missed opportunity turned into a lifelong distance. They were two men chasing greatness, but in completely different languages. One told the world to laugh, the other asked it to listen, and neither ever looked back. Number 4. Richard Pryor. Blazing Saddles could have changed Richard Pryor's life. Instead, it left him bitter and quietly furious at the man who made it happen. In the early 1970s, Pryor was one of the sharpest, most dangerous voices in comedy. Raw, unpredictable, untouchable. And Mel Brooks knew it. When he began developing Blazing Saddles, he wanted Richard to co-write it and star in it. The plan was simple. Pryor would play Bart, the black sheriff in a racist western town. But studio execs didn't like it. They called Pryor too risky. They were scared of his reputation, his drug use, his unpredictability. Mel tried to keep him in the role, but he didn't push hard enough. He let them take it from me. That's how Pryor described it years later. He stayed on the writing team. His fingerprints are all over the movie, the satire, the bite, the moments no one else could have written. But Cleveland Little got the lead role, not Richard. Mel said it was out of his hands. Pryor didn't believe that. I wrote the funniest parts in that movie, but I wasn't allowed to say them. Pryor never confronted Mel publicly, but he stopped working with him completely. There were no follow-ups, no cameos, no talk shows together, just silence. And in comedy, that silence spoke louder than any joke.
It was kind of, in a wonderful way, responsible for American filmmaking.
Mel, for his part, always complimented Pryor. He called him a genius, a revolutionary. But when asked why they never collaborated again, he always danced around the question. Pryor, on the other hand, didn't mention Mel much at all. There's a kind of comedy that punches up, and a kind that plays it safe. Some believe Pryor saw Blazing Saddles as a betrayal, not in the content, but in the way Hollywood still filtered his voice through safer faces. He could have changed the tone of the film forever. Instead, he watched it happen from the sidelines. The two men never made peace. Mel kept making films. Pryor kept burning stages down with truth no one else would say. But the distance between them never closed. They were both radicals, both rule breakers. But when it mattered most, they weren't standing side by side. Mel gave Pryor a platform, but not the spotlight, and Pryor never forgot it. Number 5. Alfred Hitchcock. Mel Brooks always said High Anxiety was a love letter, but Alfred Hitchcock didn't see it that way, not even close. Brooks idolized Hitchcock. He studied his films, mimicked his suspense, and modeled High Anxiety as a direct parody of thrillers like Vertigo, Psycho, and The Birds. It was smart, funny, even reverent. But Hitchcock? He wasn't laughing. At a private screening in London, Hitchcock reportedly sat stone-faced for the entire 90 minutes. Not a smile, not a word, just silence. And when it was over, he stood up and left. He mocked me, and then expected me to thank him. Hitchcock never publicly slammed the film. He didn't need to. Word spread quickly. He felt humiliated. He believed Brooks turned decades of careful suspense into a punchline. And for a director obsessed with control, that kind of ridicule hit deep. Mel, for his part, tried to smooth things over. He reportedly sent Hitchcock a leather case full of rare wines as a peace offering. Hitchcock returned it, unopened. Parody is only flattering when it's done by someone who understands the craft. According to biographers, Hitchcock felt that Brooks crossed a line. It wasn't just about jokes, it was about respect. He believed Mel didn't fully grasp the psychology behind his films, and that High Anxiety reduced his life's work to a series of cheap gags. Brooks later downplayed the tension, claiming Hitchcock gave him notes before filming. But insiders say Hitchcock was blindsided by how far Mel pushed the comedy, and deeply offended by the way he was portrayed.
What's it like to go to Chasen's with Alfred Hitchcock?
Oh, I mean, you can get it on my box set.
Years passed, and the two men never reconciled. Hitchcock never mentioned Mel Brooks by name again. In interviews, he would refer to him only as that American comedian. Mel, meanwhile, spoke of Hitchcock less and less over time. He was a genius, but he didn't have much of a sense of humor about himself. For Brooks, high anxiety was a tribute. For Hitchcock, it was a mockery, and the wound never really healed. They were both masters of suspense, just in different languages. One built tension to make you scream, the other twisted it to make you laugh. But some legends don't want to be laughed at. And Hitchcock? He preferred the shadows over the spotlight. He didn't slam doors. He didn't throw punches. He just smiled and made sure your name never came up again. Mel Brooks didn't need revenge. He had something stronger. Silence. The kind that closes doors behind you for good. Some actors made him laugh. Some made him furious. But these five, they left something behind. Not a feud. Not even a grudge. Just a scar. And here's the question that never goes away. Who's the one actor that almost made the list, but just barely escaped it? Drop your theory in the comments, and if you want first access to the names Hollywood never says out loud, don't miss the next Members Only deep dive, because Mel never shouted, he never warned you, he just remembered, and never looked back.